All right, and we are live for Motley Crew episode number 37. And I have the distinct pleasure this evening of being joined by two guests that make up one channel, 2toRamble, Richard and Austin. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Tori. This is gonna be a fun ramble.
I'm excited. We have so many overlapping. I mean, not that that's a huge surprise in the fantasy booktube sphere, but we have a lot of overlapping opinions, which I appreciate. And like I was telling you guys backstage, I very recently kind of discovered your channel. It is weird to me how YouTube can hide channels in the algorithm that you just are like, wait a minute. These guys have been here for 2 years. How did I not see their channel before this? Like, what happened?
How'd you find it? What popped up? Was it a short, a regular video?
I'm trying to remember. It was like 3 months ago, and I have ADHD, so like, who knows? But I think it was was it a short? Or it was recommended off of one of my other friends' booktube channels, or that was probably more likely, because I know I have friends and audience members that obviously subscribe to you guys too. So I think it was a recommended video off of somebody else's, and I can't even remember how many months ago that was now, but it was within the last like 6 months, I think.
I'm glad you found us. Me
too.
Rich and I, we're always surprised to see. At least I'm surprised. I won't speak for you, Rich, but I'm always surprised to see, as small as fantasy sci-fi, this niches, we'll get these random channels that pop up with like 100 subs or something like that. Then you'll follow them next month, and all of a sudden they've got a lot, and you're going, holy crap. Now,
yes.
Sometimes you'll see people that have 100 subs, but then not see the person that has more. It's just the algorithm works that way.
Weird.
And I think us book people are more patient. So the algorithm knows, like, hey, they're going to watch this. They'll watch another 2-hour ramble of this book.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love long form content, especially when I find channels that I really vibe with and are really like, the type of discussions they're having. And I also really appreciate, and I'll say just right at the beginning, you guys really dig into a lot of deeper topics, like with so many of your videos, and that's something I really appreciate, having been on booktube for 5 years now. Like I want a really good deep dive conversation when I'm looking for long form content, and so I've been really excited to see how much of that you guys have. So I have a lot to get through. I'm working on it. But yeah,
don't worry, we have plenty of those silly ones too, of just
I look forward to
nonsense.
I look forward to it. I want to really quick say hi to the chat. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Andrew's Wizardly Reads is here. Been vibing with 2toRamble for a while now.
What's up, Andrew?
Hey, Andrew.
Shout out to Wizard. He is, for anyone who wants a sneak peek into my upcoming book, he is Tuckerized in Cold Silver for Souls. So I look forward to everybody meeting Andrew in the book. Ryan says, if it isn't BookTube's biggest inspiration. Oh, hey. Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan. I never liked him. He really bothers me,
Yeah, Ryan.
Oh, no. I see him every time I see him, he just pisses me off.
Yes.
It's something about just the profile picture.
Yeah.
Gives me the wrong vibes.
That's fair.
Is it the hair? It's the hair, isn't it?
It is the hair.
It's always.
It is always the hair.
Yeah. See, I was just trying to be, respectful and thoughtful and make sure everybody was wearing their beanies tonight.
I feel like I'm one with everyone instead. Like I'm not alone. It's great.
That's the goal on this channel, honestly.
If Rich irks me, I'll just whip it off and.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah, just get the jealousy going. Oof.
John, after a week of unbearable drama, it would be nice. That was my thought. I'm excited to just chat and talk books. It's going to be awesome. And I thought I would bring these two gentlemen on, try to get them some exposure and some subscribers, because they're obviously like struggling over there on the channel. So
we always need it.
Yeah.
We're just begging. We're just two little shills here, trying our desperate best.
Story of BookTube, honestly. We're all just stumbling around trying to,
I'm already taking some inspiration off. I like how you put a cozy background onto the stream with a fantasy-esque thing. We don't do that. We just keep a blank blob of like blueness.
Yeah.
Can we steal this from you? Not this image particularly,
absolutely.
But we need to up our live stream game.
I'll up it a little bit.
Okay.
Make it a little better.
I've inspired you guys. That my day's made. Well, and the hilarious part about this, and I think a lot of people don't look as closely as they could, it's actually a burning village.
Oh, that's not cozy at all. That's horrifying. Oh,
From-
yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, you get cozy right up next to the fire
It
of
is,
the
and
local storefront.
I didn't realize that until I'd used it several times, and now I'm just like, well, it's a meme at this point, so I'm just gonna leave it. It's a fantasy background, you know, it happens all the time, burning villages, it's fine. Just want to set the tone, you know. Let's see. Yep, Slinksoft put on a beanie. Awesome. Okay, so I have to say, the reason why I started taking notes for this chat, which I always do, and sometimes we pay attention to the notes and sometimes we don't, was the A Court of Thorns and Roses video that Rich and Austin put out. Was it like 10 months ago now? It's been a while.
Oh my goodness.
Ish,
Yeah,
7 to 10
something like
months,
that.
somewhere in there.
Okay, yeah.
What is time? And I have to say, Austin, that we're starting off on the wrong foot already.
What did I do? What did I say? Oh no.
And I quote, "I would fight somebody to the death if they said this book was awful." So our friendship is starting off with a gladiatorial combat, apparently. Because I will say that A Court of Thorns and Roses is certifiably awful.
But okay, have you ever seen The Room, the film The Room?
I know of it. I've not seen it.
Have you seen Megalopolis, or what are those movies that are sometimes so bad they're good?
Sharknado.
Yeah, Sharknado. No? Oh, how about
it's like cult classic, like awful movie, and people enjoy it because it's awful. Just
see, I love some cult
terrible.
classics, but not those particular ones. See, you guys would get along amazingly well with my husband because he has shown me multiple videos where he's like, "You got to watch this movie. It's awful, but it's really funny." And like I said, I'm a curmudgeon, so I sit there and I'm like,
it's just
I got nothing
awful.
for you. I got nothing for you.
See this? Yeah. See Ryan's comment where he says The Room is worse than awful. See, he's part of the problem. The Room is so awful, it's perfect. It goes around. See, ratings are a circle. They're not a flat line. It goes back to a 10 if it's that bad. It goes.
Sure.
You see that what I'm doing with the thing.
I'm gonna just mimic Rich through the first half of the ACOTAR video and just nod and say okay.
That was a lot of it.
That was a lot. It was great.
I will say, like, while I was reading the book, one, it helped immensely that I was spoiled. That helped immensely. But I had a similar feeling of if it was a little bit better of a book, I would not have been entertained. But because it was so bad, I was laughing and going like, man, this is bad. I got to know how much worse it can get. This is dumb. And I kept reading because it was so dumb. There's tease for the next book. The next book is not the same. It is.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I look forward to that content. I think, I don't know. I binged through the first 3 books because a friend of mine was like, "This is my favorite fantasy series of all time. You got to read it." And she said that knowing my taste, which still to this day baffles me. She's like, "You got to read this. You're going to love it." Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. And I binged through the 3 books in like 2 or 3 weeks at most, I think. And I think what kept me going was kind of a little of an offshoot of what you were just talking about, Rich, where it was a little bit of, it can't really be this bad, right? Like at some point, there's got to be something redeemable about this story, right? Like somewhere, right? And I have not read past book 3, in fairness, but I didn't find anything in 3 books. So I'm just, I'm the ACOTAR hater camp over here. It's entertaining to have read them just so that I can then watch the content other people make and laugh at that. Like watching, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Alan from Library of Alexandria.
Yes.
his vlog reading ACOTAR on a couch in his garage is by far some of the best content I've ever seen on YouTube. Like, so that video and you guys' video, it's like, okay, it's worth having Reddit for this, being able to watch, the content coming out from it.
It's always for the memes.
Oh, for sure.
That's always the default read. Why did you do that? For the meme, always.
Yeah. So in you guys' thoughts, what are, if any, what are the redeemable factors of ACOTAR for you guys? Like, if you were to point to specific things in the book, fairly non-spoilery, but like on my channel, I don't really care. Yeah, like what were some of the things that you were like, okay, I can get behind that?
I want to first say this is so funny because I don't know if you and Mike's book reviews and everybody's colluding to do this, but the first thing, and every time ACOTAR is mentioned, they talk about Rich and I like we're its biggest fans. And Mike has this running bit where every video he does, he says, "Hey, I'm about to read ACOTAR. If you guys, want to know the ACOTAR pros, just go check out 2toRamble. They're the ACOTAR guys."
Yeah.
Constantly. And it's working. I think we now have that reputation of being the ACOTAR guys. That's an aside to the point of, I want to make clear, we're not ACOTAR fans. We're ACOTAR appreciators that other people appreciate it. We just like to see how much it's not for us and go, oh, here's a type of reader out there that does enjoy this stuff. Why, and exploring why do they? So the question you're asking, we're definitely not the people to ask of what
for sure
qualities. But Rich, I'll jump it to you, then I'll come back in. But how would you answer her question?
I mean, for the most part, it's a self-insert story. I get why someone would like it, especially when I was reading the first book of just one. I do find it interesting. This is credit to Sarah J. Maas. Is normally self-insert characters are just kind of so milquetoast that you can kind of fill in, and look, you don't love them, you don't hate them. They're just a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Feyre sucks. Feyre's like the worst character in the book by a country mile, and yet clearly still a self-insert character.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's the value of it, is from my standpoint. Like, I understand, like, everyone in that first video was going, like, us talking about like Feyre and Tamlin, and us looking at Tamlin going, really?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. There you go.
ACOTAR stand. Austin, definitely, probably.
Well, I'll fight for it. I don't like it, but I'll fight. I'll defend it.
That's impressive.
People don't care about that. It's very light stuff, but just the fact that Feyre also can't read, like, that's just thrown in there too. I'm like, let's add that as a character flaw.
Because she didn't have enough going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. With the, I don't know how spoiler we want to get, but with the decision she makes in the end of the book too, and yes.
No, she's a real dum-dum, but she's a real dum-dum and also very mean. Just honestly vicious to everyone that is slightly nice to her.
Mm.
And yet everyone still loves her and still wants. I'm going, why? Why does anybody like her at all?
Yeah.
But she's
the allure. I can be oh, that is true. I noticed that moment with Amarantha. Of course, Amarantha, the big, bad, beautiful queen, but also not as pretty as Feyre.
Of course not.
I did note, can't have that.
No.
It's ridiculous, but
yeah, it is.
I don't know. I can't fault someone for wanting their own self-insert story. It's one of those things of like, it's dumb fun, and if you like it, sure, why not? Let people like things. But I could still say it, not for me. Especially after we both recently read Pride and Prejudice. Fantastic book. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Maybe you can answer a story. Like, now that we've read Pride and Prejudice, do we need to read another romance book? Because at this point, I feel like I've read the one and everything else is just a cheaper imitation. Or is there another book that we need to read to like understand it?
Well, I am so you know how you guys have a reputation of apparently now about being ACOTAR stands, which I didn't get out of the video, by the way. I was just like, you clearly found maybe more redeeming qualities in it than I did. So I was curious as to what those were, if any. And I think you guys make some really good points. I have a reputation as being a romance hater. Which isn't necessarily true. I just am very, very picky about romance, especially in fantasy. And I tried a contemporary romance by Emily Henry this year called Happy Place. And it was not, in fact, a happy place, in my opinion. When it comes to Jane Austen, though, so I think that's part of the reason why, one of the reasons why contemporary romance is so hard for me, because I grew up, my mom is a massive Jane Austen fan. And I grew up watching all of the adaptations of the Jane Austen films. So, like, when that's your foundation, you get to A Court of Thorns and Roses, and you're like,
right.
Okay.
Right. That's like reading Lord of the Rings and then going to a copycat like Wheel of Time and like, oh, this is nothing in comparison.
I'm waiting
I
for my
wish you were in the
comment
same
section
room.
to
Wish you
paper
were in the
shred
same
you.
room. On that camera.
When it comes to Jane Austen, though, so you've read Pride and Prejudice. Was that your first like Jane Austen experience at all? Fantastic. So my opinion as a longtime Jane Austen nerd is watch the 6-hour BBC Pride and Prejudice adaptation.
Okay.
It is phenomenal. It's so good. I grew up on that one. The one with Keira Knightley, I will get arguments in the comments. It's fine. I'm not a fan. But the 6-hour one is just absolutely phenomenally written. And the other one that I would say was a big one for me growing up was Sense and Sensibility by her. And one of the main reasons why is the story. The story is really beautiful. It's a little bit more compact, I would say, than Pride and Prejudice. But especially in the older adaptation of it, you have Kate Winslet, oh my goodness, Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman and Hugh Grant. And they're the four main characters. And first of all, I'm a massive Alan Rickman fan for a lot of reasons, but his heroic character in Sense and Sensibility is one of my favorites in fiction ever. So that's my pitch for the next Jane Austen experience.
Okay.
And I'm also showing my nerd a lot at the moment.
This is awesome.
Hey, no, I'm really happy to read more of that stuff because reading the origin of it.
Yeah.
With Pride and Prejudice now, I looked at now going into ACOMAF and seeing Rysand and going like, oh, this is just a cheap, worse version of Mr. Darcy. Mm-hmm. And I'm now seeing Mr. Darcy everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
He is the man. And
he's the original dark, broody anti-hero romance interest. Yeah.
But where in Pride and Prejudice, he's more of a character with some genuine flaws and mistakes, but ultimately a very good man, like and wonderfully. But everywhere else, it's just a cheap, hollow imitation. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, no, it's definitely hurt my opinion of modern romance stories. But
yeah,
I'm very happy to read it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I definitely think it's out there, and there are some fantasy series. At some point, to dispel the rumors, I need to make a video that's like, here are the fantasy books I love that have really good romances in them. They are out there, and I do appreciate them. But yeah, everything feels very shallow in a lot of the modern romances, and everything feels very sensationalized. It's very like, the characters almost become kind of like, the difference between Darcy and Rhysand, where you almost have this caricature of a deeper character that could have been there. I have a lot to say about Rhysand, but yeah, I totally agree. And it makes me sad because I would love to see more really deep and interesting romances written into fantasy books. I know you guys are big fans of Sword of Kaigen.
Lovely.
Amazing book. And I know, like, it's really hard to be like, so the romance in Sword of Kaigen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it, but
it was, what I thought was really interesting is it was a really, I think, powerful play on, like, looking at a broken marriage. And like, I like to see things that take it to a point where the flaws are a little bit more realistic and not as, like,
misunderstandings.
Yeah. But yeah, so for you guys, like, in fantasy, if we're looking at, like, the fantasy books that you've read so far, what are some of the ones that you would say have really well done romances? Besides ACOTAR, obviously.
Ooh. Rich, do you want to go first, or I can? I was gonna make a comment on that,
Go for
but
it.
it was a little off tangent, so let's answer this first. Rich, do you have something?
Well, honestly, one of the books I would pick would be Sword of Kaigen. Just
Yeah.
as a, I understand like the difference of calling it a romance story, but it is a story about a marriage, a
Right.
mother's love. Like it is centered around love and relationships and handled really well, incredibly interesting. One of the more interesting romances, if you would call it that. Other than that, though, I mean, there's a handful of examples. I think there's one romance in the Wheel of Time that's actually good. The rest are not that great. Looking at like just my entire bookshelf, there's not that many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna make a comment on that. And
Guy Gavriel Kay's The Lions of Albasan.
I'm gonna read that this year.
That has fantastic romance.
That was gonna be my answer to the romance, but I was gonna say there's anything that's pitched as a romance book. I don't have enough like, hey, this is a romance book and it has fantasy, which is essentially romantasy.
Right.
I don't have any of those that are romance that I like because it's not the genre we read. I was gonna say it's probably a medium thing personally for me, where I love romances on film and TV. For example, there's some film romances like La La Land, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like Your Name, like the list goes on. And some of what I love about those romances is it's the critical part of the story, but it has this deep theme about relationships that matters. A lot of the ones labeled romance on the book medium, it's the point of the romance in the book is they play it like it's a rom-com, but on a page, or I shouldn't say that. They play it more. It doesn't typically go for a deeper message. When I hear here's a romance book, it's like, okay, you want to feel for these two characters and like get involved, just like I do with my action books. And yeah. So if there's more romance out there that the point of it is to give you some deep thing to think about relationships, which is why I love Sword of Kaigen's point on romance. That's what I like. So all the romances I would say would be books that it's not the focus, but it has a good romance, like Lions.
Same.
But it would be kind of misadvertising to go read Lions for the romance.
Right.
It's very true.
You know, it's not like it's a point, but not the point. But sorry, that's my little ramble. I don't know. I've yet to find a book that's romance that I can go. One thing, maybe I think it's just a great book, and this is going to cause havoc in the chat. It did in our book club, at least.
Let's go.
This Is How You Lose the Time War is a romance-focused fantasy book. I don't love it, but I really love it. I think it's great. Some people think it's perfect. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Has flaws, but I really, really enjoyed it. So that's my answer.
Weird. It's weird and fun. It's what it is. Like, but going in with zero expectations is essential.
The way to
and
go.
Also being able to just let things go. Of willing to be confused and move on. If you have to have an answer to everything, which I know there's plenty of readers that like they enjoy the unlocking of the puzzles and like if something doesn't make sense, it turns it off and like I'm out of here. This wouldn't be the book for you. Like zero expectations, willing to just be ignorant about things. It's a fun ride.
That's also how I pitch most people Malazan. So I get that.
What about you? Do you have an answer to that, your own question?
Well, I noticed that to the side of Rich's head is The City Watch by Terry Pratchett.
Oh. Romance in that?
I have not got to the City Watch yet.
I discovered it last year, and it is probably going to be, spoiler, on my moving into my top 10 series of all time this year.
Yes.
Ooh. Yep.
Yes.
It is so good. Like, I'm very picky about satire and like comedy in fantasy. Kind of like, well, you guys just recently read Orconomics, which I also really enjoyed a lot, and that kind of has a satirical bent, but also the deeper undertones.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Pratchett is like that on steroids. Like, he knows fantasy so well, and he's also got that really sharp British wit. And those two things together, like, he knows it so well that he can make fun of it in a way that's actually funny, and also utilize it as a commentary on so many different aspects of society and humanity. And there is, Andrew Wizard mentioned in the comments, there's a romance in The City Watch that is kind of a subplot through a lot of what's going on, but it is just so wholesome, it's ridiculous.
I'm willing to bet it's the romance that is kind of introduced or teased in Guards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm probably down. That's as far as I've gotten in the Guards series of Terry Pratchett.
So Guards I read a year ago now in January 2024, and I really liked it. Men at Arms is the one that made me fall head over heels in love with the series. So liked book 1 a lot, kept going. Men at Arms is like, I loved that book. So that was my book of the year last year.
Oh, wow.
How are you going to be reading all of Discworld? Are you going to go by series, or are you going to go all the way back to the beginning?
Great question. Maybe. So my husband and I have been listening to City Watch on audio together, and so it's going to take us most of this year to finish City Watch. I also read the first Death Cycle book, Mort, which was adorable. And I'll probably I'll go back to the Death Cycle after that. I'll probably do by series, and just kind of mood read them and like what I'm feeling at any given time. I'm trying really hard to do more of that in my reading. So yeah, I think I'll probably just hop around through the different series. So you've read, is that your only Discworld so far?
So I've read more Discworld than Austin here.
Okay.
Austin, which Discworld books have you read so far?
Mort and Small Gods.
Okay.
And
they're
both incredible,
yeah.
I've read up to all the way to, what is it? I guess all the way up to Small Gods, like all of those, including, and then on top of that, Going Postal. That's a little further ahead.
So you're doing them in like publication order?
Yeah, so I started off with Small Gods, and then went to Mort, Guard, Going Postal.
Kind of jumping around.
And then I just went, nah, I'm going to start at the beginning. I love this too much. I want to catch all the little references.
Yeah.
It's fun. And so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. I think it would be easy, but especially because they're shorter books, it would be fun to, like, if you're going to reread 41 books, go back to the beginning and like read them that way for a reread, I think would be really, really cool. But yeah, I love City Watch so much. I mean, shockingly, I'm a Motley Crue nerd. And so, yeah, City Watch just checks a lot of boxes for me.
You said it's hitting your top 10 favorite series now. So what spot did it take? What's getting kicked out?
I don't know yet. So I usually do in May or June is usually when my top 10 for the year, like, update comes out. Yeah. And top 10, I hate top 10 lists. I'm not going to lie. But
I knew it. I knew we weren't alone.
No. But
you will notice a severe lack of top 10 lists.
Well, you're doing pretty well for yourself without them. So I think that's, to all of us who are like, oh, you have to have a top 10. You don't.
No.
No. I like doing that one specifically because it's kind of more for me than my audience, if I'm being honest, because I like to see how that changes every year with an update of what I've read. And I know everybody likes seeing those. So I try not to do much of that either, because I'd rather talk about the books themselves instead of here's a list.
It's definitely practical for those people that are looking, hey, I've seen book reviews from X YouTuber, booktuber, and then go, okay, what are their favorites? Because that's what I want to read.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to pump our numbers this year of at minimum 52 books this year, which still feels like we got more ground to make. There's just, do you have book reading goals where you go, okay, I'm reading X number this month? You said you're kind of doing more vibe, if that's the right term, vibe reading, or just kind of do what you feel. Well, what are you doing this year?
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of take a step back. I in 2023 and 24, I read 100 plus books.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yes, and also no.
Okay.
I like being able to talk about that many books. That's obviously a plus. But I also got to a point where I was like, I don't remember half of what I read this year. I'm having a hard time, like, so this year what I'm trying to do is I set my goal at like 37 books, because it's like an easy hit it kind of goal. But I'm actually doing more journaling and annotating this year, which has helped me immensely get more articulate in being able to talk through what I'm reading. And because that was one of my big goals, is like quantity is going to be way less for me this year than I want to remember what I read for longer than like 3 weeks afterwards. So you guys are pumping your book numbers this year. Do you have like specific, from what you can tell us, that isn't going to be a spoiler for upcoming content, but is there anything that like you're really excited to get to this year within that goal?
Go ahead, Austin. Yeah, we're going to finish up Sun Eater, which we're just loving.
Nice.
So that we're loving. We have Rakio. Our interview with him comes out Monday. And that was just, he is the best. It's going to be so hard to talk about his books and just not think, man, I love him as a person.
Yeah.
So Sun Eater stuff, super excited for. I think Rich and I too are on the same page with, there's a lot of big series to finish, but I don't want to start another big one. I want to finish ones that we just read book ones of and then stopped. So there's a lot of those, like Dandelion Dynasty. We finished book one, then stopped. And there's Malazan, which I started. You continue.
You'll like the second book a lot more. I read the second book, vastly improved in my opinion versus book one, and I want to finish Malazan this year as well.
Nice.
I'll be honest,
also you'll like it.
Great. I mean, I'll go as far to say it, because I love my Red Rising, Stormlight. We know how I feel about. I mean, maybe people don't, but
for people who are watching the stream, he's looking up at his books. His books are above the.
I thought you were just seeking some divine inspiration.
Oh yeah, I was looking. But Discworld, I've only read 2 books of Discworld, and it's my favorite series. I don't care. I just love it. He doesn't. I don't expect he'll ever miss. He's perfect, and he's my guy. And I have 39 more books to read that I know I will love every single one except the first one, because people say the first one's kind of okay, but I can't wait.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's just, it's not exact. It doesn't feel like Discworld yet.
Interesting.
That's the biggest problem with it. But I mean, it only takes him 2-3 small books to get there. So, but I will say my biggest anxiety with books is like, I want to finish a bunch of things, but I like the comfort of always having another Discworld book to read.
Yeah.
I dread the day that there's just like, I finished Discworld and then it's done.
Yeah.
Because there's no more. And like, I like having another, like, if I'm sad, I can pick up another Discworld book. I only get so many of those. At some point, it's like, oh, you had a sad day. There's no more Discworld books. And then my day is forever sad. So
yeah. So you'll just have to pick one and save it to like read on your deathbed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we did agree on our channel is we will review we'll review every Discworld book.
Okay.
And we will end our channel and we will stop making videos when we have reviewed every single Discworld book. So the last video will be
a Discworld.
The 41st Discworld book review.
Wow. So
if you start seeing a bunch of Discworld reviews going up, it's like, oh,
they're done. They've had it.
They're real done with this thing.
They're gonna go make pasta now.
Yeah. Oh, you know about our pasta business?
I do. Yep. So one of the first things I do when I have people on the channel is I go to their channel and I go to their videos tab and I hit oldest. That's the first thing I watch.
Oh,
so
talk about that in our first video.
I think. Well, did you? No. Okay, that one I have to change. I did watch that video, but also it was the one where you guys were talking about how you made a BookTube channel.
Yes,
that one you talked about. There was pasta making and dumpster rental, which I love. I have to say I love nerds. I love the progression that somehow we went from pasta to dumpsters to BookTube. Like that's an impressive serial entrepreneur progression right there.
Some would say the latter two have a lot in common, actually. So it kind of fit to just transition from dumpster business to let's make BookTube comment. So I can't believe you did great research because we talk about that rarely.
Yeah,
but
I think I saw 2 mentions of it actually in the videos I watched. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, Rich, do you wish we did the dumpster business?
It'd probably be more lucrative.
Yeah, you just need to read more Sarah J. Maas and make your channel a guys read romantasy, and you'd make it, honestly.
The unfortunate thing is doing BookTube for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
We both know how to increase the numbers, but we're not willing to cross that line. One of them is romantasy. Like, we noticed the huge shift. Like, our audience, we're gaining a new audience. We see it. The other is at like manga.
Yeah.
That's a line that we're just not willing to cross. We know the views will be much better. Yeah. We get it. Everyone's doing One Piece, but no.
So are you guys like not manga anime people at all? Or
I read manga all the time.
Okay, you just don't want to make content about it.
Yes.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's just I think it's almost a completely different community.
Oh, for sure.
Genre, and I don't want to, like, I felt a little bit betrayed as a BookTube fan when Murphy like just took her main channel and went to the other one. And hey, it's her right to do what she likes, perfectly fine. But it's more of like, manga took over. And like, no, I lost it.
Yeah. I think from we see that in publishing all the time. You go into a Barnes and Noble or whatever, and there's always going to be this like cyclical trend wheel that's happening, that things get really, really big and then we lose our interest in that and we move to something else. And, and I think like I've had this conversation about epic fantasy specifically within fantasy in general. Like that's kind of the thing that's just always chugging along. It's always going to be there. Like it's kind of the like central line almost through fantasy, because it's so much about where fantasy came from, that's like the heart and soul of the genre in so many ways. But yeah, it's and I don't know about you guys, but it is hard when like this is the type of content that I don't necessarily want to spend all this, because we spend a lot of time, as you guys mentioned, like it's a lot of time to do a BookTube channel. I don't want to read romantasy, but I know it gets tons of views. But me talking really passionately about this thing I really love, and I'm like, please watch it. And that's hard sometimes because it's tempting every once in a while. I'm like, well, fine, I could read Fourth Wing.
I'm curious what your reasons for reading. Obviously you enjoy it, but do you also read as an author to study it a bit and go, hey, were you compelled to read another genre just going, hey, for my own purposes of wanting to write better books? Is that ever a thought that crosses your mind?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been reading and writing kind of parallel ever since I was a kid. And so, yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from the books that I've been exposed to through BookTube too, because that just blew open the door on all the different things that you can read. Yeah, I definitely do a lot of I can't ever turn my writer brain off, I guess is kind of the point of that, where to some extent that will always be there. There will always be a part of my brain in the background that's going, okay, well, yes, I see that you could do this, but this would be better. And you could like this would if you take, like it's like working on the story aspect of it in the background. But I love experimenting with different genres and different styles, because I think you can learn the most when you just like osmosis as much good storytelling period as you can. So yeah, I love, like, I remember I was 20 when I read Gardens of the Moon in college. I had a friend, I was brand new to epic fantasy. I was working. Oh yeah, it was a time.
That's an entry point.
It was. I'd read Mistborn and I'd read Karen Miller's Hammer of God trilogy, and that was it. And I hadn't even read the whole trilogy from Karen Miller. And I had a friend who was a couple years ahead of me in college, and he came over and was like, hey, I have this book that you should read. You like fantasy? And he hands me a mass market paperback of Gardens of the Moon. And reading Gardens of the Moon at 20, like, unlocked parts of my brain I didn't even know existed until that point, especially as a writer, because I was like, whoa, like, what is this? You can put epigraphs at the front of your chapters? That's insane, like, so, and yeah, he's one of, hands down, one of my
You can have 46 character point of views? What?
And somehow it works. Okay, teach us your ways. Yeah, I'm excited because, so Rich, you've read Dead House.
Yeah.
Austin, you've not.
I have not yet, no.
Okay. Dead House Gates is my favorite fantasy novel of all time.
Oh,
awesome.
Yeah. Wow. So I was very excited that you were.
That's sad. That it doesn't get better? Or, like, you've read all of them, Lazen?
No.
Or...
So
okay.
I read the first 4 over a decade ago. And then I was a senior in college. I had my first child. I got married right after my freshman year of college. Like, I went fast track into life, and everything got kind of set to the side. And I always just like, man, those are amazing books. Those are one of my favorite series of all time. So I've only read 4 of them.
Wow.
And now I'm going back and rereading and going to go through and finish the series. So I just finished my second read of Dead House Gates ever, 10 years apart-ish. And that was just, what an experience that was. So I'm in Memories of Ice right now. And just, when you go back and reread something that you really loved, there's always that fear of like, is it really that good? Yeah. Isn't it really? I really gushed about this series. So if I go back and hate it,
that actually is scary to do. This is completely unrelated because Malazan is an adult fantasy book. This would not be the case, but Pendragon is a series that Rich and I both grew up as elementary kids reading.
Yeah.
And I went back and read the first chapter of it. And obviously it's for middle schoolers. It's not for adults. And I went back and read it and go, oh, I don't appreciate it now. But I remember my kid brain going, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So Malazan will be different because obviously it's for adults. But still, do you want to destroy that perfect image in your head of your favorite thing? That's tough.
It is. And that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to actually finish the Red Rising books that are out, because the first 3 are also one of my favorite series of all time. Morningstar is in my top 3 SFF books ever as well. And so I was like, everybody's like, Tori, you're not a real fan if you haven't read all of them. Which I'm still bitter about. But I was like, fine. So last year I read the next ones, but it was the same thing. Or I was like, but you guys don't understand. I love this trilogy so much. He's I'm terrified he's going to wreck it. Even though I trust him as an author, I'm terrified. Yeah. So, yeah.
After Red God, we'll let you know. We'll let you know if he lands it or not.
Well, I'm up to Lightbringer, so I'm caught up.
Oh, you are caught up.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Caught up now.
Okay,
yeah. Okay. Before you jumped on backstage, Rich and I had a brief conversation about them. You guys, because you guys are all caught up, obviously, to Lightbringer. Oh, yeah. So okay. Since Red Rising came up, I need to know for you guys, like, rank. What are you guys's if you're going to rank the books?
Oh,
what does that look like?
Oh yeah, here we go.
You got the sheet.
You came prepared.
Oh yep, I know exactly my ranking.
Love that. Also, love this comment that Murphy is on Richard's top 10 anime betrayals.
Yeah. Honestly, yes.
Murphy.
Anime betrayed
Murphy.
All right, I have my ranking whenever we're ready. I got it.
Shoot.
All right, go for it, Austin.
Number 1, without a doubt, Golden Sun. That right there is
I'm shocked.
Cinema. That's peak. Golden Sun, incredible. Then I have a tie for second because because one is objectively better, the other one is emotionally better. That is Dark Age and Red Rising, the first book. And I know Dark Age on objective standard, but to me they're both 5 stars, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got Lightbringer.
Okay.
Then I have Morning Star. Sorry, it's lower on the list. And then lastly, I have Iron Gold. That's on the bottom.
Okay. Interesting. What I love that question, because every Red Rising fan that I've talked to has it's always different.
That's a sign of a fantastic series.
It is. Yeah.
Rich, do you have yours down? And if you don't, Tori, I'd love to hear yours jump in as well. I want to write this down just to see our comparison.
Shout out to my friend Theo, who's in the last half of Morningstar. That's awesome. I hope you're enjoying it, Theo.
Oh yeah.
We have a Red Rising hater in the chat. That's all right. I'm not offended.
Oh, that's Hanka. Hank, get out of here, Hanka.
I'm seeing some new faces in the chat. I'm like, I bet I know these guys are from not my audience. Welcome.
We bring them everywhere we go on live streams.
They just follow you everywhere.
You know how some people have groupies? Yeah, we have people that just like to throw stones at us behind us. That's not
tomatoes, as you. Ryan Scott. There we go. Golden Sun, Lightbringer, Dark Age, Morningstar. Interesting. Okay, so Iron Gold's on the bottom so far.
Okay. Very close, I guess, ish. Yeah, I have Golden Sun as my number 1.
Okay.
Then Dark Age. Then Lightbringer. Then Red Rising. Morningstar. Then Iron Gold.
We're pretty close, Rich.
I know.
Dang.
That's the thing. We agree very much on most of the series, except for book number 1 of being perfect. It's
but
it's real good. It's real good. That's
I agree. I agree with Austin's statement earlier about how is it the best book he's written? No, definitely not. Is it an emotional that book? Still, I've read Red Rising, the number 1 book, 8 times at this point. I love that book so much.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm just writing down so I don't trip up here.
So we know Morningstar is your favorite, right? Or is that your number 1? Okay, yes. I'm curious where you go from there.
I have a very specific reason that I didn't hear you guys talk. In fairness, I have about, how much of this video do I have left? About 50 minutes of the 45 minutes of the Golden Sun discussion left. I haven't heard you talk about yet, so we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, making sure I have this right. Yes. Okay, so my first one, Morningstar. Golden Sun is number 2. Lightbringer is number 3. Red Rising is number 4. Iron Gold is number 5.
Oh my goodness.
Dark Age is number 6.
Whoa, that's
a spicy take. That's a spicy hot take.
I wish we could talk spoilers because I'm very okay. We're gonna have to. Can you give?
As I'm watching your Red Rising content, I'm like, I know what we're gonna be we need to have a discussion about Red Rising. We really do, because so many things. Dark Age almost put me in a reading slump last year. Almost made me quit. I almost didn't read Lightbringer after Dark Age. I almost quit the series because of Dark Age.
Wait, what? Okay. We allowed to talk spoilers?
Is there a spoiler-free way of saying that? Is there like, can you be vague enough? Yeah, don't spoil people.
And this is something that I have run into before. I don't know if you guys have read Robin Hobb yet.
I have.
You have? Okay. Have you read Live Ship Traders?
No, only the first 2 books of Assassins.
Farseer. Okay.
Yeah.
Love that. That's awesome, Tanner. Okay, so I can do that without spoilers. Dark Age to me felt like there were so many character assassinations in Dark Age in terms of writing that I felt like I didn't even know who these characters were anymore, and not in a way that I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's this breakdown of these characters that I love. It was like it for me, it was shifted very heavily from being a character-driven story to being a plot-driven story. And there were so many moments in there that I felt were like, and I have no issue. I love military fantasy. So like gore and violence and that kind of stuff, I'm used to that in my books. But there's a line that I think he crossed in Dark Age where it was gratuitous to a point that there were so many moments where halfway through the book, I was just like, really? Okay. Real? Okay. And it was like, it wasn't not, I mean, Dark Age isn't a fun read, regardless of how you feel about it. But like, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. But I dragged myself through the last half of that book. I was like, I hate this so much. I hate it so much, and not in a good way.
I see why you put Lightbringer much higher, because it brings it back to character a bit.
That was my, like, okay, I'm going to trust Pierce Brown because I know he's an amazing author, and everybody tells me it's a return to form. And it was like, all of a sudden I felt like the color was back in the world. Like all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is the story we were telling. Here are the characters are back. Like, this is great. And I have some spoilery reasons for some of the reasons why I didn't like it as much, that we could definitely get into off Motley Crue. But yeah, Dark Age was a 2-star read for me, and that was generous. Yeah. Yep. Sorry. I know it's a hot take. I know it's a hot take.
You got to have those hot takes, though. That is brutal. I see your point about the plot, though.
Yeah.
Though I freaking loved it, but that saddens me. But then again, I
enjoyed most of the characters on it, except there is one character I believe talked about in that one, but overall, there's a character assassination of one particular character in the second series that I would probably agree with you on.
Okay.
But the rest was such positives for me that it made up for it in the wash total.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Lightbringer felt like I knew where we were again. Like suddenly I was like, okay, I trust you as an author again. Like, these are my characters. I'm seeing, like, thank you. Like, because I knew, this isn't really a spoiler. There's that 10-year jump between the end of Morningstar and the beginning of Iron Gold. So obviously changes happen, right? And the characters we left at the end of Morningstar are definitely going to be different and have been changed by the experiences of a decade for sure. But yeah, Iron Gold, I was like, this is fine, whatever. But Dark Age kind of darkened that one for me as well. So yeah.
Iron Gold, at least I think for both of us, like, it was rough to get through.
Yeah.
It was just really boring.
Yeah.
And ultimately left me wondering at the end, like, why was most of these characters a POV? They didn't need to be, like, in this story at all. Like, it hurt. But to me, like, Dark Age was such a step up because, like, it feels like all these POVs are now actually important. They're needed in the story. Right. This is not
And it was kind of bringing in some more familiar characters as well, which I think, or more of them, which I think helped. But yeah, I mean, it was a bold choice to go. I think it was necessary, though. I totally understand why he went from a solo POV to multi-POV. And I think I'm curious to know with that, actually, what are you guys' opinions of Darrow as a protagonist. Like in terms of, especially because I know when you, especially in the first 3 where you have a first person narration, you have to have a pretty specific character to carry that. And I'm curious for you guys, like if where does Darrow stack up in your list of favorite characters? Like, is he up there, or is he just kind of like, oh yeah, that's the guy that tells the story?
He's
Go ahead, Austin.
I have to say he's one of those characters that it depends on the book you say from the series of how much I'm just loving Darrow, and mainly because the first 2 books, Red Rising, I shouldn't really say too much just because, hey, where does Darrow lead after that? But can I talk about the first trilogy with Darrow? Just that's spoiler free enough, maybe. But Darrow, yeah, it's
plug your ears in the chat if you don't want to hear
about it. Darrow to me, I loved following him in Red Rising. I was hooked from the get-go. To me, and this is a criticism you'll hear from book 1, Red Rising, so this isn't even really getting into the series, but Gary Stu-ness of Darrow. I look at Darrow like you would look at Superman, in the way that Superman is not interesting because he's the powerful stuff, but like Rich used the example of Superman's interesting because of with Lewis, or because of his relationship or whatever Superman's dealing with, where Darrow's flaw, like from book 1, won't give the answer to this, but leadership was a theme of book 1. He gets through the things, but the focus isn't, hey, can Darrow beat the guy? It's how and it's his other flaws that are compelling to me. But then, so I love how sometimes authors need to make things. Often you feel the hand of the author come in, like they're changing the plot so that the character can go somewhere. Because of Darrow's personality, he moves the plot. He's the one that everything feels so natural, guttural, fast-paced, because that's exactly what Darrow would do. So it never felt to me like the author had to come in and change something, because this is what Darrow would do. And so the plot is justified through Darrow. So I love that. And that's where it gets later in the books. I think some side characters elevate above Darrow, because we're also following him for so long. How much else can you do? You kind of get that. And I will say there's one book where I go, man, I don't think Darrow would react like this. I'm very frustrated. And that happened in one book. I'll leave it at that. But that is my thing of, like, I'm such a Darrow fan and love following him for all those reasons. And there's sometimes where he takes a backseat because we've had X number of books of him. So
yeah.
I'm in similar spot of, I really like Darrow as a character. I think later on it's more enjoyable to see just his character change a bit. That was my biggest drawback with book 1 of, I liked him and I liked the story. But compelling character, I didn't think he was as compelling. Like, this is one of the disagreements Austin and I have on Darrow. I think the stated flaw from the book and the promise of what his fundamental flaw is said, but not actually, it doesn't have any consequence.
Sure.
Is that a spoiler to talk about his flaw?
Hey, if you want to see that, our Red Rising review.
Go watch the Red Rising.
But there's a fundamental flaw of his that I don't think is actually ever
followed through
actualized and given real consequence. Especially with when I read that, I read pretty recently Rage of Dragons.
Sure.
And a comparison difference of, like, this is the real consequence. This is kind of what I want to see of, like, oh no, that's a real flaw. And that's kind of my problem with Darrow as the character, but as time goes on, like, he's always hype.
Oh,
always hype to fun. Like, so
people follow him for a reason.
He's such a fun character to follow. So
I think, and I don't know specifically, so I'm going to also try to answer that in a somewhat spoiler-free way. But one of the things that I think is important with Darrow through the entire series, and especially that first trilogy, but you see it pop up in the second half too, is, like, I'm going to try and not make this a dissertation on the first story arc. In the very beginning, the first line of Red Rising is, I would have lived in peace, but my enemies brought me war, right? And like, I think it's very easy as we get through the story, even very quickly in the first book, to forget the fact that like Darrow's kind of like a Hufflepuff. Like he just wanted to have a nice house, have a family, be left alone. Like he's not a like killer. He's kind of forced into that space. And I think that foundation has a lot of, it crops up a lot in especially the first book, but as we go through the series, and I even think that Pierce brought it back a lot in the second series and shows just there's a lot of that. But I think like as soon as Darrow has the opportunity to make people love him, that's what he almost like gravitates toward, is like, I want people to be happy. I want these people to like, if, and you guys were talking about a specific character in Golden Sun that Darrow thinks he can change. And the idea that if like the old story of if I just love them enough, they'll be better, you know? And I feel like Darrow has that kind of flawed mentality with so many of the characters in the story. And sometimes it works. Severo's a great example of that. Severo is the one of the things that I noticed in the video. I was like, are they gonna talk about Severo? I'm waiting for Severo to come in here. Severo is my favorite SFF character of all time. I love Severo. I love him so much.
Awesome.
He's so awesome. Yeah. Okay, so I have to know, kind of, since we're not doing top number videos, let's do top 3 Red Rising characters.
Rich, I took the first.
Actually, I already know my first one.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Number 1 character out of the entire series, both first and second arc, Volka. Volka's my favorite. I love her.
Yeah, that's the correct response, Tori. That's the correct response.
I'm running through the list of character names in my head and trying to like, because I've only read the second series once, so I'm like, oh yeah.
I love Volka, and I need more. I need more of Volka, and Pierce Brown needs to answer my prayers. I really hope he actually does. I don't know if he will. I've been let down before.
Yeah.
But number 1, beyond that, Darrow.
Okay.
And then I think the Jackal, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I think I have to pick him. I'll still never get over book 1 scene with him.
So good.
That's one of the best villain scenes I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so good.
So good. The Jackal is such a good villain. Yeah, such a well-written villain.
I was going to say, I might just toss out there, maybe this is telling of what I think of Pierce Brown's character writing too. Jackal, Apollonius, and Lysander.
Wow. Wow.
In a way, again, I don't want to spoil people ahead of time, so I'll say people that have read the series know why those 3. But to give the opposite side, I think Victra and Severo and Virginia for the other side. Sorry, I gave 2 separate lists there, clearly.
That's fair. Who said we had rules to follow over here? Like
exactly.
Yeah. The rules are what you make it.
Do you agree with this? With the thing about Red Rising is there's other books that have higher peak characters, as in
for sure.
That there's other books where I go, okay, this protagonist or this character in this book is one of my favorites ever. But Red Rising has a cast of so many people that I care about. Yeah. Where there's not. I wouldn't say there's a Red Rising character that tops like Misaki for Sword of Kaigen, or like pick another like a Glock the type character from First Law, wherever. But you take the cast, and I'm just like, yes, All of them. I'm invested.
Yeah.
That's just what I love about it. But do you have your top 3?
I go back and forth on this because I love so many of these characters so much, which kind of goes exactly to your point. Severo, number 1, period. He has no competition ever. After that, it gets really muddy. Roke is in my top 3 for sure.
Ooh.
There's so many that I love so much.
Tanner said a name we didn't that I 100% agree with. Diomedes.
Yeah, Diomedes is amazing.
Oh, Diomedes is so good.
So good.
I mean, it's way easier for me to do a top 10.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say Mustang is up there.
Yeah.
I love Victra.
Yes.
So I write one of my like default character archetypes that I love writing is basically Victra. Like I love the barbarian female characters so much. So I've always really loved Victra. I think Roke is definitely up there because I find him one of the most heartbreaking characters in the series. And he's like, you know, the poet and the person who just wants so much that loyalty, you know, that it's, and he's just, it's a beautiful soul character that, you know, things happen to because it's Pierce Brown and we can't have nice things. So yeah. I love Roke. I really love Roke. In this, I don't know. This is clearly something we all need to talk about more.
We got to have a spoiler full discussion.
Full series, full everything. I mean, I feel like we could even break that down into each book because like there's so much there. But I do totally agree that it's the full cast of characters that really brings the magic of Red Rising because yeah, there's so many good ones. And I think that was one of the reasons why Dark Age made me so frustrated is I felt like it's such a character-led series. And then in Dark Age, I felt like it was just like plot beat by plot beat. And I was getting really mad at it. I was really mad.
Well, you mentioned how you have that writer brain that's constantly on too.
Yeah.
That is, it's not that Rich or I have that where I guess our critical brain sometimes on if we're thinking, hey, I have thoughts about the book actively. We review stuff,
Yep.
Like I find myself sometimes when I'm reading going like, oh, that was a bad or good plot point, world building thing. Oh, I want to note that later. But with, I say that because of the years we've been on BookTube now, I haven't found, this happened obviously before we had a BookTube channel. A lot of books hit me like this, but Red Rising, Golden Sun were the only books in all of the books that we've read, reviewed of however many now on the channel. They're the only books to where when I was reading them, I had to bring them in bed, read them instead of going on YouTube, stay up late until 3 a.m., read them again, keep reading them, finish it like that. I didn't care what else was going on. Of course, I've loved so many other books since then. But I've always been able to set down other books because you know, they end at a point where like, okay, I can come back to this. There's not been books like that since I have had to read this. And I'm just looking for another one of those. I want another taste of just give me something that I'm kicking my feet at like 3 a.m. giggling, going, oh, look at that fight scene. And just, I want another one. And maybe Rage of Dragons is the one, Rich. I don't know. So,
I mean, I know you'll like the first book. That's a guarantee. Like,
okay.
It's not even a question of, ooh, maybe. No, it's your book. It's your kind of book. 100%. Now, the last series I remember having that kind of mental where I had the book with me all the time of like morning, noon, night. I was reading it in bed all the time. It was Wheel of Time. That's the last one. Like I didn't put it down. There's a reason I read all 14 books in under 2 months. And just barreled through them.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was just nonstop reading. And no, that was where my big love came from. But now there's a couple others, I guess.
So Wheel of Time was what was your like big kind of, that's the series?
Oh, for the longest time, it's one of my favorite series. It like I know the flaws and I know it's not for everyone, but I love it. I read it pretty early on into picking fantasy books up again. So like I read Stormlight Archive first. That was the first thing I read getting back into books. And then subsequently, like I think I read Mistborn Era 1 or something else. And then I went right in a couple other odds and end books. Then I went into Wheel of Time. So pretty early on. And yeah, I fell in love with it. Just the massive nature of the story.
Yeah.
Ultimately the characters that I personally really like the prose. It was fun, mystical. It's a vibe. And despite all the flaws that someone could say, like for me, where the flaws are, it causes frustration for people. Completely get it. That frustration is fuel. Like, as I know it'll be like, to me, I don't see him as like, oh, the author didn't get it. No, the author is making these characters deliberately frustrating, and they will eventually solve their problem. And they do. They actually do. Like, the problems that people have eventually do get solved.
Right.
But you have to go on that journey.
Right. Yeah. It's
Austin
always
going on that journey.
It's like, no. So have you tried Wheel of Time, Austin, or you just know like this is not going to be for me?
I have read 4 of the books.
Oh, okay.
Hated every one of them.
I did not like a single one. But the thing for me is I didn't like it from book 1. I already didn't like it. And I've seen with some series, so this didn't happen with Sun Eater. From Sun Eater in book 1, I didn't like book 1, but book 2 I loved.
Yeah.
And I feel like Wheel of Time, people say, like Rich even suggested, hey, if you don't like book 4, stop the series because that's the one people love. It's one of your favorites of the series. There might be those fans out there, but I generally say for Wheel of Time, if you are not like moderately like, oh, okay, this is fine to good, it's hard to come back and like it after that, because I already from the get-go was going, all these characters feel like I'm apathetic toward everyone. And so as I'm going through these, and Rich knows the flaws of Wheel of Time, but he would see this as a bonus. So what I'm going to present from my negative is like why Rich loves it. It was originally set out to be like a trilogy or a smaller series, not 14 books. And he got so invested in the character, he just kept going, made it bigger, made it longer. And to me, that's why it feels like the slog it is. But then to Rich is going, oh, these characters, now I get more books of the stuff I like.
Yeah.
Also, it was not planned to just be 3 books. The first book was planned to, like, he didn't know if he would get picked up for a deal, and so he made it so it could end. That's the only one where it's like,
yeah,
where he ended it in a weird spot. The rest of them, no, he probably stretched it a bit, but he had a general plan. I think there's like basically books 9 and 10 are kind of where like people think that maybe this didn't need to be, like, this could have been 1 book really, but no, I get it. Have you ever read The Wheel of Time, Tori?
No, I'm sadly more in Austin's camp on this one. I have so many friends who really love Wheel of Time, and hearing them talk about it is my favorite part of Wheel of Time existing, honestly, because it's really fun to watch people talk about a series that really like made them fall in love with fantasy either at the beginning or in a new way. I have DNF'd Eye of the World 3 times. Like I tried. I really did.
There is something about, if you've read enough fantasy, and especially like modern fantasy, trying to go back to classic fantasy is hard. Unless it's incredibly purple prose where it's like, it's flowery, it puts you in a vibe, like it has to do that. But the tropes that classic fantasy has developed for the entire genre now just seem washed out, basic, like I can definitely see myself like if I tried to read Wheel of Time now,
right?
I probably definitely would not have liked it as much. But it was new to me then,
Yeah,
and then because it was new, I could get invested, especially by later half. Because it does evolve and change where the character arcs, while not new, are done expertly well.
right.
But if especially when we did our review of The Eye of the World, Austin picked up on so many references and callbacks to both like Dune and especially Lord of the Rings that
Mhm.
I didn't pick up when I
Yeah.
first read it. It just was fresh and new to me. So I'm wondering, is there a problem with just reading too much? Because then you start thinking to yourself like, oh, this is just that, but a little change. Where you just become overly critical.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that because I actually want to do a video on this soon, as soon as I figure out what I'm going to say. um, I started reading mystery and thriller books this year, and I am brand fresh new into murder mystery and thriller. Like I have read nothing, and I've read two now, three. Um, and one of the things that really struck me in the experience of going to a completely new genre, and I think this absolutely fits in with what you just said. I was like, I have nothing to compare this to. This is great because I
Mhm.
don't know any different. I have nothing to compare it to. I don't know the tropes of this genre well enough to be like, okay, I see what you're doing here. Like it was so fresh and just a blank slate reading experience. It was very weird almost because I'm so entrenched in fantasy at this point that I can smell a trope from like 5 miles away, you know,
Mhm.
at this point. Um and it really got me thinking to I think it's important for me, at least in my own reading journey. This is why I go outside of the genre. This is why I read other things and I take breaks from fantasy. And because I think, yeah, I think you can kind of get tunnel vision almost after a while where you're just so entrenched in it that you can't really like come into each book as a fresh experience almost.
Totally.
Yeah.
It definitely is a factor to think about when like, us as reviewers, like
Yeah.
to think about like, yes, I have to say like what my opinions are about it because that's what people will generally want to know. They're like, hey, what does Richard and Austin think about said book?
Yep.
But also when reviewing it, like it's not particularly helpful for everyone of like if you're wondering you haven't read a ton of fantasy,
Hmm.
want to know what to pick up,
Right.
who that person also needs a good recommendation, and it maybe is not the same as what I would give to someone like myself. But
Absolutely.
Orson Scott Card, I think in some panel interview, was saying like if you like fantasy and sci-fi, like do not like don't consume, don't be a consumer. Because if you consume content, you're eventually going to hate it because you're
Yeah.
going to see every trick, you're going to know every nuance behind it, and then the magic's gone. Like
Right.
don't be a critic. Just
Mm,
enjoy the thing and pace
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense, and I think a couple of the times in the last 5 years where I've hit kind of a fantasy burnout, that's exactly what it felt like, is that I couldn't just sit down with the book and enjoy it anymore because I was immediately like from page 1, I'm like, "All right," like and I this year I'm really working on when the annotating is helping that where I'm kind of slowing down and I'm taking my time with this specific story and I'm not trying to kind of close out everything else when I read it. And it's also why I'm mixing in other genres into my reading more this year because I think it's going to help me not get to a fantasy burnout again. Um so I'm going to do some like translated books this year. I have some like Japanese translated novels I'm really excited to get to. Murder mystery and thriller. Like I want to read another Jane Austen novel this year. Um so yeah, I mean I think mixing it up is a good thing. Which and I'm curious to know your guys' take on this. I think as a booktuber, it's also because the algorithm really rewards you when you stay in your niche and you have a specific target. It makes it hard when this is what I do for my booktube channel, to kind of like skirt the sides of that or go into a different area. And I almost feel like it makes it hard to continue series even, because you're like, well, I got to get to the next book that I'm going to talk about, another book or another series or another author. And it does turn into, I think sometimes it's very easy to turn into kind of a hustle kind of mindset.
Oh yeah, the whole I think Library of Viking or some other people months ago made a video about Dark Side of BookTube,
Yeah,
and
there's
they were
been a lot.
talking about there were several people talking about, hey, do you use it as a grind and a hustle,
Right.
or you just reviewing books, and what
Right.
is authentic? How are you going to do this? Because the approach Rich and I do is we post videos for a reason. It's not just otherwise we just like sit and chat and not
Right.
press the record button. So
Right.
there is a third person. There is the audience that's there.
Yep.
So obviously we wouldn't some videos we do like a tier list. No, we wouldn't do that if BookTube didn't exist. I wouldn't sit
Right.
with Rich. I already sit with him enough. I wouldn't sit and tier list that for an hour with Rich. But I guess what we do is, okay, our first thing, and is this answering your question, by the way, or is this going off a total thing? Yeah.
Go for it. You can say
Because
whatever you want.
we will pick a first thing is an idea or a thing we want to do.
Yep.
For example, Rich doesn't want to do mangas, he reads them, but what we're interested in is fantasy sci-fi. So that's the books we read. And so we'll pick either whether it's a book review or idea and go, hey, that's something that either we really want to do or like, okay, let's try it new, or we'd be fine doing it. Like whatever that scale is. And then how do we package it? And so if, hey, we really want to read a third book, fourth book of the series, which we're going to do anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I also want to talk it with you. We have a channel. Okay, let's continue to do it. Like our Dungeon Crawler Carl videos get so little views, but hey, anybody else reads those books, they have a 2toRamble thing to look up in perpetuity. Also, the value for us isn't just getting that video that goes out there and goes big. The value is Rich and I finish a book, and you were saying earlier how, hey, you read so many books, you're forgetting what your thoughts even were. Well, we have a whole archive now of what are our thoughts on all those books. And on top of that, the selfish benefit is you finish reading a book, you prep for the video, we talk about it. Well, that's going to stick in our heads a lot better than if we just read the book and forgot about it. So every book that we do review, I can think back to stuff and not even have to look back at what were my thoughts on Iron Gold that I read a year ago. Well, I remember specifically talking this out with Rich. Like it's in my head, the big points of it. So to us, the benefit on top of that is like, oh, also the BookTube stuff and like the community is built. So like already there's so much entrenched of why we'd want to do videos that aren't viral stuff. So it's not even like we're doing it generously. It's just we like to do it.
Yeah, and that's what you enjoy.
Yeah. So if that answers it at all, Rich, you agree, obviously.
Yeah, no, of course we agree on it, but it's something I hope generally content creators should think about is if individual videos are battles, then your brand is the war. Do not sacrifice a battle for the war.
Yeah.
People watch YouTube specifically because of the authenticity of it, of your personality. They want to see you enjoying things. If you're not enjoying it and you're just doing it for the views, people can tell.
Yeah.
And they will stop watching. And like maybe that video will technically, because the thumbnail and it's clickbait, it'll get some views, but ultimately people are then watching a video about the topic and not you.
Yes.
That's the draw is so when we do, like, we're going to be doing Dungeon Crawler book 7 here. We're reading that pretty soon. Like I'm reading it next week at least. Is it going to do really well? No. But one, it helps build our credibility of like we're doing what we love. Like we really enjoy this stuff, and that comes across to people. And so we can do those, and then we eventually try and do a fun video that'll do well. That, like, I don't think anyone can really say like, oh yeah, they're just shills that are just trying to catch the latest views and hop on the latest bandwagon. Like, no, we genuinely do what we like, and we're not only about views.
Right. Yeah.
So that's at least how we see it. If we've tried, we've honestly have like we've tried a couple of videos of like, this would work so well, and then we record it and go, we did not have fun, and it shows.
Yeah. I've recorded several videos that I edit afterwards, and I'm just like, I don't want to put this up. Like I can tell my heart's not in it. I don't like, and for me, I think one of the things I really love about you guys' channel, and I can see as being a huge benefit of running a channel with somebody else, is that discussion aspect, where when I do a book review, I sit down and I'm talking by myself to a camera. And I mean, I do live stream discussions obviously as well, but not for every book I read. And I definitely do better articulating my thoughts in conversation. And so that's one of the things that I have started pulling back from individual book reviews, which I do want to start doing more of those this year, but I'm doing a lot more like collaborative discussions with people, because I've noticed that I also enjoy that more, and I like having somebody else to bounce ideas and things that we noticed. And so for you guys, would you say that that's like, what are some of the benefits that you've seen of doing a channel with two of you? Because there's, obviously we have Talking Story, we have other channels, there StoryTube, that have two people together doing one. What are some of the benefits that you've seen with that?
Well, right off the bat, trying to do long form content just by yourself, hard. That's real hard. If you want to see a comparison, if you look at our recent video of Orconomics, that is both of us talking, but I'm the only one that read that book. That video is significantly shorter.
Yeah.
Not just because it doesn't lead to as much discussion, but no, there's plenty of books where maybe I'm not like, there's plenty of 3-star books out there. And that's not a very entertaining review. However, when we discuss a book, it can be far more entertaining than a 3. Like, yes, the book's a 3-star, but there's some nuance and something to talk about here, and that's far more interesting.
Totally agree. Yeah.
That's when Rich was giving that great advice about, I can't believe I said that. Great. Okay advice. It was fine advice.
Careful with compliments here.
Yeah. Wow.
Can't have that.
At least he's wearing a nice hat, a beanie. I'll give you that.
Yeah, there you go.
So I think that whole thing about brand, which is boring to talk about, but the whole thing with Rich and I of the long form podcast is the only thing we do have is it would be counterintuitive to not be authentic and do the thing we love to do, because the whole thing is we don't have the video title that is, hey, click this viral 1.5 hour long podcast. That's never going to happen. It's not. So the only thing we have is this is our it's our personalities, are like that. You vibe with
better word to use than brand is just our reputation.
Yeah.
Our like your reputation is the most valuable thing you have, because once you lose it, you're never getting it back.
Right.
And then for those, I mean, there's other videos out there that topics do really well, and people know how the algorithm works, and that even excites them, because people look at BookTube or any YouTube niche like a business, and that's their thing. They like, hey, they want to see a thing grow.
That's fine.
Doing a business, that's totally great. Hey, if it becomes, want to read that one? Oh,
I'm sorry. There was Adam. I was trying to highlight another one.
Yes. And so with somebody who, like, let's say they're doing that YouTube grind and they're miserable. Well, clearly they don't love the grind enough to, then you don't have that enjoyment. But anyway, so for Rich and I, the two people, it's surprisingly not. I feel bad. Here's why. I'll put it two ways. It's cool because I feel bad that the solo person talking to the camera, the other booktubers, like, I feel like we put less work into our videos. I feel, because we just ad lib and yap, and then video's done. Yes, there's the editing and all the production, the thumbnails and stuff, but we don't. We tried to write a script about a fun 4-minute video. Just we thought we were going to try to go into a little bit of comedy. We sat there like idiots going, I got nothing. Where if we just went onto the camera and just ad-libbed a thing for a minute, it would have been better than the thing we scripted out.
Right.
We just, it's not how our brains work, I guess. And we also is it that a thing too about comedy? If you try to be funny, well, comedians do this, obviously with stand up, but for Rich and I, trying to be funny was hard because we were going to do this whole bit about like, actually, no, shouldn't bring it up because it was a bit on a thing from like a year ago. You know what I'm talking about, Rich, right? Like the whole skit that we were going to do.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
but it would be like with BookTube stuff. So anyways, but it was going to be a skit and it was going to be a fun play on the BookTube stuff. And we were trying to write jokes for it and just couldn't. And so we scrapped the thing. It wasn't fun for us. We were like, this is miserable. Let's just go talk about a book again. So I guess that, to answer your question, is that's the big benefit of, to us, it's much easier to do, where our talent isn't in script writing. Your bookborns out there who are just pros at
she's amazing at that.
Yeah. So we are, that's a skill we don't have. And we go with our, I guess you could call it the podcast niche on BookTube, if that's a thing.
Yeah. It is now.
Especially when we first started it. I don't think it was as, like, I didn't see too many other channels that were doing 2 people book podcasts. At the time, at least. It seems to be more popular now. Yeah. As it's grown. But
yeah, it's definitely, I don't script my videos either, unless it's a deep dive topic. Like I've done a couple. Well, and this is the weird part. Sometimes when I'm like, I get very fired up about a certain topic and then I just need to sit down and make a video about it. And I'll remember to give myself a few bullet points. So I was going to say ramble on forever, but that was poor choice of words.
Correct choice of words.
Correct.
Yeah. And I did one in, is that October or November now? One of the two. And I was just, had a couple conversations with people and was really feeling fired up about talking about how being on BookTube for 5 years has changed the way that I read and like some of the things I've noticed, and not the community, but just my reading habits and how they've changed and how I want to fix them going into this next year. And I don't know what happened, but apparently that, like, just coming in with some bullet points and having an authentic opinion about something, randomly people love. Like, it's my best performing video to date now, and I'm still just like, okay. Like, were there any videos that you guys have done? It's really, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but like I kept bringing my phone over like every few hours to my husband as he's working, and I'm like, look at this video graph. It's just going like, like what happened? And like he was starting to get sick of it, I think, because every few hours, like, look at that. Can you believe it? Like, what? It's at like 75K views now or something ridiculous like that. And it's just me talking about, well, the title was BookTube Destroyed My Reading, and we know how everybody loves a,
write that title down, Austin.
There you go.
Write that one down.
You guys need to jump on that. But what were some of the videos you guys have made that, like, were there any that you weren't expecting to really resonate with people or do really well, that you were surprised that people were like, yeah, I love this?
Yeah. What first comes to mind for me, Rich, is Rich's mom gives the best content ideas. So half of our ideas come from Rich's mom.
Love that.
And one of them, she texted Rich saying, "Why are books getting so goddamn long?" And so that was the video title. Why are books so goddamn long? And hey, it was a topic we were interested in, but it did way better than we thought of. People are actually really interested in this topic. And so that one surprised me a bit, because it wasn't something, I guess it surprised me just because Rich and I weren't thinking about it going, then getting these large expectations for it to do well, because his mom just gave the idea. We're like, oh, let's run with that. So it was unexpected, just because if the biggest effort for videos for us, if it's not a book review, is coming up with a fun idea we want to talk about for an hour or
Yeah.
two.
Yeah,
And
like
so
a deep dive.
yeah, we didn't get married to any idea because she just sent the idea and we had nothing to do with it. So that's
Yeah.
why I just went, we'll roll with it. Whoa,
Yeah.
really well. But Rich, did any come up that I didn't think of? Because there's a couple other, right?
There was a short that I was kind of surprised did
Yeah.
as well as it did, but in hindsight now looks like it did really well. We were just joking about like Lord of the Rings dumb fan theories, and the short that got like 6 million views was
wow.
The theory is Frodo doesn't know Legolas's name.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that short did way better than I would expect it would do, but
right.
we never expected that.
Yeah.
Never.
You just put content out and you're kind of at least I am. I'm always like, huh, okay. The one I just remembered, the first video I think I came across from you guys' channel when you mentioned that. I'm 98% sure the first video I ever saw on you guys' channel was the one where, Austin, you had your grandmother on to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And because I was going through your videos today and I saw that I had watched a good chunk of that one and I was like, oh yeah, I got to go back and rewatch that. That was a delight. Of the amount of it I saw was an absolute delight of a video. And just
the two best things possible: the best grandma and no Richard. It was so nice.
she can just take his spot as a formal member of the 2toRamble, and yeah.
Oh, that was super special too, because my grandma's doesn't live in the area, so she was coming down to visit, and it was just, and I had her reading Lord of the Rings. I got her it for like Mother's Day months and months prior to that. Just Fellowship of the Ring. She liked it so much she continued the trilogy without me pushing on her. It's like, Grandma, this is perfect. And she also, I mean, from people who saw that video, hadn't had any Lord of the Rings spoilers, didn't know about Mount Doom, had never seen the movies, and that's just such a rare thing to have somebody that doesn't know an ounce about to me, that's as
outside of the pop culture canon.
Exactly. Imagine someone coming and saying, hey, Luke, I am your father. They never heard that line.
Yeah.
And I know Lord of the Rings isn't that level. I mean, that is probably the most pop culture you can get with the Luke, I'm your father. But that's just rare. That was super cool. And obviously my grandma's best. So that was awesome. And Rich did an episode with his dad on The Martian, which was
I love that book.
Oh yeah. That was a eye-opening experience of like I know my dad's work and everything, and part of what makes him good at his job is he's good at presenting. He knows how to give a good presentation, research, and something that he did that we later on had to start copying and remembering to do is when we have discussions about books and we go into a spoiler discussion and we're talking about a specific scene, we just kind of talk about the scene.
Yeah.
And we just go into it. And we're kind of just assuming everyone's on the same page. My dad, and this was kind of early on, like this is over a year ago, I think, that we did this video. Every time we talked about a scene, he would stop us and then describe the setting of the scene, like give context, what happened, the name of the characters, and then he would describe the scene. Then we talk about it. And he just knows to do that.
Yeah.
And like it's a really good presenter. That's what you need to do when having these type of discussions for a camera. Yeah, that was. I really enjoyed talking with him about it because he really liked those books, and he's one of those guys of like, it's fantasy or it's sci-fi, like it's not real literature,
Yep.
But he loved those
I get
books.
That.
So
yeah, my dad and I have a difference of opinion on that as well. And my dad likes to read, and actually more than I realized when I was a kid. Like now that I'm an adult, I'm like, he's always reading something. I mean, he's read like last year or 2 years ago, he read the Iliad, and I was like, okay. And really likes a lot of kind of more old classic stuff and more kind of nonfiction. He wants to, like, as he puts it, he likes to read books where he can learn something. the implication being that
you can't learn anything from fantasy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we will someday we will have that conversation. I did get him to read Frankenstein though at one point. I was like, okay, like this is kind of like a compromise between the classic and the sci-fi fantasy world. So like try Frankenstein, which is also a big favorite of mine. He read it, to his credit. He wasn't a giant fan of it, but at least he read it. But yeah, that's honestly a whole conversation that I feel like kind of goes around booktube quite frequently in our niche, is like, is fantasy somehow less than, other quote unquote literary genres, and like I've learned so much from fantasy, and I'd be curious to know from you guys' perspectives, like, what is it about the fantasy genre that speaks directly to you, and like, what have you gotten out of it personally?
You want to take this one first, Austin?
Yeah, I'll give you time to think.
Oh, no, I've been yapping. I just trying to get you to yap.
No, this is one of those. I'm like, dang, how do I sound eloquent with this? Oh, I'm gonna say so stupid. But with fantasy specifically in sci-fi, I have to steal from the best. Ken Liu said, gave a great when we chatted with him, had a great interview with him. He's an awesome guy too. He said something super simple that obviously is very it's blatantly obvious what sci-fi is, but hey, sci-fi and fantasy is cool because you can get the perspective of not just a human, but an alien, a satellite, a robot, an animal, whatever, and you get a story in the fantastical that what fantasy and sci-fi does is perspective, essentially. And I'm extrapolating from them what Ken Liu's saying. Now I'm kind of going off the beaten path, but what I'm taking from this is fantasy and sci-fi gives you the most amount of perspective that other fiction cannot.
Agreed.
Now, yes, there's still infinite stories you can tell in there within your tropes, because a lot of stories are similar, but the perspective that it does is allows you to. I mean, fantasy is the empathy teacher, empathy teacher when you're children. It's a way to, as well as sci-fi does this more so, but fantasy too, to explore themes that philosophy and nonfiction books teach you, but in a fun package. So I find it, if a story connects with you emotionally, then you can actually take the message it's getting at with a new lens of, okay, I didn't understand what Plato was going for and what Plato's Republic, or whatever Socrates was doing back
overrated.
Exactly. Whatever they were doing.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I'm an Aristotle man myself. If I had to pick,
I had to read Plato in lit theory, and I had to read Plato in lit theory.
You know
it.
But instead of reading Plato, you can then read fantasy sci-fi books that touch on the philosophy of why I love Sun Eater right now. One of the things that it also presents these deep thought-provoking themes in a package of behind a character's perspective. Wow, what would you do in his shoes? So yeah, it's perspective and packaging it in fun and empathy. So that's my 3Ps: empathy, perspective, and fun. There, yeah.
You do like making, I've noticed in the videos, you do like making like 3-letter or 4-letter points.
That's just like the OCD running rampant. It's like, I need order. I need a package like this. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
His OCD and like my ADD balance each other out.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah, I never stick to something.
I feel that.
But Rich, what would you say to that? Why fantasy sci-fi?
The question of what do you get out of it, and does can you actually, is it too much? Are you actually getting some value of it? I actually do think it depends on the reader, because fantasy is not pointless, but as a reader you can make it so. If you're reading like the same story over and over and over again, and it's mostly entertainment stories, you are just kind of reading entertainment over and over, and the value of that can be escapism, which is cool. There were especially times in my life where I was reading fantasy for the escape.
Yeah.
That's the biggest value I got out of it, and that's what I needed. Now I don't actually need escapism as much anymore. I'm a lot happier, and I'm now drifting more towards sci-fi. I enjoy the what ifs. I don't need as much, but yeah, you can actually do too much. I think if you just stick to the same, if you only read stuff that you know you'll like with stories that kind of hit the same beats over and over and over again.
Yep.
Maybe you'll at best you'll get a better version of that moral lesson.
Right.
That you've already learned.
Right.
So it depends on how you challenge yourself.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think too, like bouncing back into the empathy point, I grew up, I was an only child, and I was homeschooled, which it was a pro on so many different levels. But one of the downsides of it is that growing up without siblings, and we moved several times when I was young, and a lot of my friends were long distance. I think stories in general, but fantasy especially, helped me grow up in a more empathetic way, if that makes sense, because I was immediately introduced to stories where I was seeing multiple points of view about the same events, and I was looking at, like, people in different worlds that were very different from me, and I was walking a mile in their shoes, so to speak. And I think for me, at least, it really added to my growth in empathy as I was moving from childhood to adulthood, and changed the way I feel like I was more open to new experiences and looking at the world from different points of view, just from fantasy stories in a lot of ways. And that wasn't the only factor, of course, but I do think it played a pretty pivotal role for me, for sure.
All three of us were actually only childs. That's
really
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Nice. It's a club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always get asked the question, what do you think, Tori, of who is the only child compared to, if someone has three siblings, so youngest, middle, and oldest, where's the only child most connected to in that category?
I would say first.
You say they're the oldest child?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have, I mean, you definitely have elements of all three when you're the only one. But I do think, because first child is often the guinea pig of the parents figuring out parenting.
Yeah.
Our parents that was it. So, like, there wasn't any, so we kind of got they weren't, instead of practicing on so I have 3 kids, and that's a lot for me because I was an only child. So, like, my house is so noisy compared to how I grew up, and I love it. But I'm learning I'm putting into practice things I'm learning with multiple children who have different personalities, and it's a completely different experience. Whereas, I think only children oftentimes kind of fall into that sort of first child area because we're kind of still the guinea pig in a lot of ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that an only child has the expectations of the oldest with the responsibility of the youngest? In the sense of, part of what being the eldest child is, you're the guinea pig and you have expectations and all these things of, like, your parents are focused on you, but also you have to take care of your siblings. And, like, there's more responsibility being the eldest child.
Yep.
But the youngest child doesn't have any responsibility. And it's the same thing with an only child. They get the focus from the parents,
and they get all of the fun attention with their parents as well. Like, we don't have to share that, which is also nice sometimes. The one real kicker is that you don't have anyone else to blame when something happens, like, I tried the cat a couple of times. It never worked. I did try my dad once too. I remember that. I was like, Dad did it. Didn't work.
And it's always a 2-on-1 because you have no backup. So it's, wow. What would it be like to grow up with siblings? I don't know. Yeah.
My husband has 3 siblings, and I've just made kind of an observational case study of them through the years, where I'm just like, huh, you guys are really interesting. I don't understand, but it's very interesting. And like the thing that as a parent that has been the hardest is as an only child, if you don't like something and you want to do something else, you just get up and move yourself and do something else, right? Like you, whatever. The concept of not being able, like, to leave each other alone is beyond me. Like, I don't understand. My kids are like, they're just, they're bickering and they're at each other. And I'm like, guys, you can just leave. You can just go do something else. You don't have to bother but apparently, and this is a sibling thing that I've learned, you do. It's like ingrained that you must bother each other. I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm just like,
it's all a dominance hierarchy fight.
I guess so.
If the first one to give up and leave loses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, Waldo says no love for the middle child. Yeah, shout out to all the middle children out there. You got it rough.
Yeah, middle childs get the reputation of the no responsibility but no attention from parents. Like, they're the ones that wild child. Yeah.
Which is go ahead.
Oh, no, you go. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, which is interesting because my three kids, I have book-ended introverts and an extrovert in the middle. Which is very interesting because you've got middle child and she is like straight up extrovert. Like she will meet anyone at any time and strike up a conversation. She's 9 and she's like, I will talk to anyone at any point and we will be friends, which is great. And then I've got my introverted bookworms on either end of her. So
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, so the middle child's not a bookworm yet.
She really loves being read too, and because she's such a social butterfly, like she would need to do a podcast with another person, if that makes sense. She's got to be like, if she can't entertain herself for 5 minutes by herself, like she must be doing something with someone else. Whereas my son, who's 12, would live in his room for a week and never come out and just read books, and he'd be completely fine. So we have to be like, no, you do have to come out and like eat with the family, and like, because he gets, I mean, that's the ADHD hyper focus, right? He just like, he's in there reading his book and he's happy.
But I get so not in hindsight jealous. I wish I read more as a kid. I read as a kid. I stopped in high school though. But having not to classify you as a booktube parent, but talking to parents that are on booktube, it's so cool to go, okay, I know, even though the kids might not want to, you'll be like, hey, reading, you should read.
Yeah.
It's good for you. It's fun. That's gotta
also, you're reading books that more than likely your kids are eventually also going to probably like.
Yeah.
It's very different of, like, my mother also loves to read, but also her genres are not always the same as mine.
Yeah.
I mean, we both actually have some love of fantasy and sci-fi, but she likes her classic sci-fi and fantasy and doesn't really go into the modern stuff. I could imagine maybe growing up really different if my mom was also reading Red Rising. You know what I mean? That's a little different. Maybe you'd actually enjoy it and read more books with them. But
it's been cool. One of the coolest like fantasy nerd parent moments I've had so far is when my son turned 12 in December. We had my 2 younger children stayed with my parents, and he and my husband and I had a movie marathon for Lord of the Rings. And it's the first time he'd read the books with my husband, but he'd never seen the movies. And that, like, I was like, this is one of those moments where you just feel like you're truly living, like getting to see we all talk about, we wish, that one book we wish we could go back and read for the first time again. And watching his reactions to everything in the films for the first time was just like peak fantasy parent moment for me. It was so amazing. And he's in his like sarcastic preteen boy era, so Gimli was his favorite character, not surprisingly. Love to hear it. And his favorite part was the Balrog, of course. But it was just, it was so cool. And my husband and I are both English majors, writers, nerds, So like our kids are doomed basically. They're gonna grow up little nerds, and I love it.
Your middle child's gonna have to carry them.
I
Carry
know.
him through all the social events.
She kind of already does, yeah. Yep, she's awesome. Yeah, it's been a really cool, because especially too, and I don't know for you guys, but like when I grew up in the 90s, nerds were not cool. And like now it's a little bit more with like, oh yeah, you can be a cool nerd. Like we have stores in the malls now and stuff, other than Hot Topic. And yeah, I think like getting to see them grow up in a completely different nerd era is going to be fun.
I will say, in high school, I always noticed like maybe this was just my perspective on it and unique high school or something, but it was never like the jocks versus the nerds. It's the jocks and the nerds versus the geeks. You know what I mean? Like it was the geeks and jocks. That was the no. Get along.
Yeah.
But most of the time, like the nerds and jocks got along in the sense of like both excelled. There was something like a jock can like appreciate the chess nerd of like, that's like you studied hard. Like that's like, my God, that's really smart, and like that's pretty cool. But like the insane obsession with like Lord of the Rings. A jock just goes like, it's fantasy. What are you doing? What is that about?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was always my impression. It's
yeah.
The geeks, theater kids versus the nerds and the jocks.
Yeah.
How do you geek versus nerd? I always think like geek squads, computers, nerds, like, but what is the definition? Nerd is book smart. Geek is you got some fandom where you're like really into a thing. Is that the difference?
Yeah. As far as I know, it's geeks are like fandoms and
okay.
And nerd is STEM field.
Oh,
that's what
that's how you see it.
But maybe I'm wrong.
I think geek is STEM field. Like geek
is.
I
did too.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Terms get
what
thrown
do the comments think? What
do you guys think? Well, my dad was he was an IT manager for like 38 years. So like I'm very used to the idea of like the techie geek squad kind of guys, and like I grew up around that kind of mentality, so that's just very normal for me. Unfortunately, none of it like osmosis onto me at all. But yeah, I don't know, because I don't like, I was a good student, but I was also very, by that definition, very geeky. And I also, when I was very young, I looked legitimately like, I went from looking like Shirley Temple when I was really little to Pippi Longstocking, basically. So I was the freckled redhead with the really long hair, and I was like this wide. Like, so I fit the mold perfectly,
Yeah. I need to see what people are thinking on this. If anybody has a comment, hey, what's up? Is that John or Jacob? What's going on?
Probably John. Yeah, I was also a theater kid, so I get that, John. Yeah. Well, and even within this is true of anything, but even within the theater department, at least for me in college, there were the cool theater kids and there were the uncool theater kids, which I think is pretty normal anywhere.
I've never seen a more cliquish group than theater kids.
Oh my gosh, it's awful.
Oh my God, they are so catty.
Oh yeah.
I was also a theater kid, but I was always like the choir background. I played in the band. I helped build the sets. Like that was.
Yep.
I was the background character always in theater, and that was my place.
I was the sound tech, the help build the sets, the side character. Yep.
main stage character energy was
something
hard
else
to deal with. Yeah, those were personalities.
It's true. Yeah. Oh man, that was and I came into it. I had done some community theater with and it was like me at 15, 16 and a bunch of adults doing community theater. So they kind of raised me into theater, and they were amazing. We did murder mystery dinner theater shows that were comedies. Oh my gosh, it was the best time. That was one of my favorite high school memories with them. So I came into college like fired up. I was like, I love theater. And then I got to theater in college and I was like, oh, this is not the same. This is not the same at all. Bummer. And there were a lot of really good things in theater too. But yeah, there was the main stage always get picked for the main roles, and the professors have no idea what kind of people they're casting. And then there's the geeks that make the show run. So yeah.
I'm on board with there's some actors I don't like just because they give me theater kid energy. Like Timothy frickin' Chalamet, who is growing on me and I hate it. He's actually
careful, Austin.
He seems like a cool guy, and I can't watch interviews anymore of him because he comes across too likable. So I just have to I just have to not do that anymore. But he gives that energy. But at the same time, theater people who do theater, I still find it's one of the most impressive feats and talents to do. Memorizing lines for that long, acting, and one of those actually, and John, who's here, he's saying, what is main stage energy mean?
You're one of the nice ones, John. We'll let you in.
Yeah, John being in theater.
John does have main stage energy. He
absolutely does. Not in a cliquish way, though.
Yeah. Oh no, there's a stereotype, like there's a personality type that like theater kid energy I don't gel with. Like I just but thing is, that's not exclusive to theater kids.
No.
I think it's that's a trait I've seen in different departments, but it most exemplified in theater kids. The theater kid energy, and there's not all theater kids have theater kid energy.
Right. There's jocks who have theater kid energy.
Oh, there are jocks that have theater kid energy. But,
yeah, they are.
But no, the theater kid energy is the stuff it grinds my gears. Of like those are the people I don't get along with very well.
Well, and it was weird because like I was homeschooled, so when I got to college, that was my first like official classroom experience. I learned like that was a massive learning curve for me. I was like, so this is how you're supposed to act. Okay. All right. Cool. My husband came from a tiny town in Northwest Iowa where like the jocks were the theater kids. Like it was such a small school that like there were theater kids that played on the sports teams, and there were jocks that they got up on stage to do, stuff with the plays. And so they were all kind of intermixed. So when we both went to a really small Christian college, and it was still like a metropolis compared to what both of us were used to with like 800 students or something like that. It was like, wow, this is like being on an alien planet a little bit.
Yeah, that is Adam says in chat, kids in theater equals cool, theater kids equal not cool.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That sums up exactly how I feel.
See you, John.
Bye, John. Have fun with
John.
Gardens of the Moon. We do actually like you.
You don't have theater kid energy. You have main stage energy. They're different things slightly, but they're different things.
Let's see. We've gone after John. We've gone after Murphy. Anybody else we want to call out while we're here?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? That's what we do on BookTube. We just make fun of our friends all day. Oh, man. Well, we've been going for 2 hours, and I definitely want to be respectful of you guys' time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out this evening. I've been looking forward to this for months, so I'm very excited that we finally got a chance to do it. And yeah, thank you guys for joining me for a Motley Chat.
Thank you for having us on.
These are scheduled adult play dates, and I love it.
Yes, absolutely true.
Love this. So thank you for having us on. This is I wrote down 2 video ideas based on our whole talk, and can I just say, because I want to credit you. We have here we go. are book readers geeks or nerds? Like that's a great question.
Yep.
And then is fantasy real literature? I was like, you know what? We got to dive into that. And if maybe with one of those videos, if you want to come in,
I would love that.
Okay, lovely.
Love
because I know we got Red Rising stuff to talk about. We've got there's a lot.
It's gonna. I mean, honestly, it might as well be 3toRamble at this point.
Pretty much, pretty much, yes.
I do have to ask.
Yeah.
How many of like? I know you said you prepped. You had questions that you prepared for the whole video. Did you get to any of them?
Yes, actually.
You actually did?
We
so
did.
Impressed.
We did. I always have this because I, especially when I haven't had a chance to, and I didn't think this was going to be an issue just based on my experience watching the videos that you've done. But sometimes I want to have some topics in case like we don't really know where to go with the conversation or there's a lull or whatever, which usually that's not an issue on BookTube. We're all quite good at talking. So that's not usually, but sometimes there's like I knew I wanted to talk about the ACOTAR video, Red Rising, your pasta business. And there was one that I think would be a really fun collaborative chat that is something I've been throwing around for a while too, is talking about, you guys bring up in several of the videos I watched, talking some really interesting points about target audience. And that's a topic that I find incredibly interesting. And that was one thing I mentioned on here that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but we can put a pin in it for later.
Okay. Hey, we will steal you for another topic. We must have you in, because we got to talk several hours on a specific focus.
Yes,
that's
amazing.
As much as we ramble, we try to keep it to a topic and then divert off of that. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, thank you for having us on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody in the chat, and if you're watching the replay, down in the description box below, there is a link to Austin and Rich's channel, which if you aren't subscribed to it yet, you definitely should be. They have a very funny, authentic vibe to their channel that I had a really fun time like going down the rabbit hole of 2toRamble videos today, and I definitely going to be watching some more of them, and I will try to remember to actually leave comments. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I really look forward to whatever we decide to talk about next.
Awesome.
Thanks.